So here's the headline, everybody, and I'm going to give it to you straight before we go anywhere. The United States government, right now, today, is purchasing your private phone data, not requesting it, buying it off the shelf from companies you've never even heard of that you definitely never agreed to share your information with. There's no warrant, there's no judge, and there's no legal process at all.
And when we say phone data, it's not just your shopping habits, it's your GPS location down to the hour for the past several months, where you work out, which medical clinic you visit, which protests you've attended, who you spend time with, when, and how often. It's all up there for sale.
And this is being run by ICE, those nasty masked US immigration and customs enforcement dudes. And we're telling you this as Canadians because that same tech infrastructure is being built around your life. Some of it, it's already running right here.
So let's back up and actually explain what we're talking about here, because there's an entire industry and it's called AdTech, which is short for advertising technology. Its whole job was to build a detailed profile of who you are so companies can advertise to you.
Right. It's sort of like the reason that you looked up a hotel in Portugal once and then saw ads for that hotel 3 weeks across every single app on your phone. Yeah, it's classic, but that's the benign stuff.
Yeah, because people don't realize how deep it now goes. What these companies collect goes far beyond ads. They track your physical location, like where you are and for how long, what apps you open, when you open them, your movement pattern over months, and who you communicate with, and where you go regularly versus where you went once.
And then, and this is where it gets scary, they package all of that. They build a detailed profile of your life, your habits, your relationships, your beliefs, your health patterns. And then what do? They sell it to anyone, to advertisers, to marketers, to researchers, and now to governments.
Yeah. And most people assume that there was some kind of wall between that commercial world and the government world. Well, there isn't. There is absolutely no wall, and ICE figured that out a long time ago.
So, based on their own internal documents, which were obtained through reporting by Politico, ICE has been actively exploring how commercial data from ad tech companies can support immigration enforcement. And I do want to be clear about the scale we're talking about here. We're not talking about tracking one specific person of interest.
Oh no, they're mapping entire communities. They can pull the location history of every device that spent regular time in a specific neighborhood, every device that hangs out at a particular community center, a specific mosque, a specific legal aid office. And then they build networks of association.
So, you attend a protest 3 times. Your data now carries a flag. You live near someone that was watching. You're flagged. You worshiped at the same location as someone on a list. Flag. You got medical care at a clinic that serves a certain community. Flagged. You see the pattern here.
And what's scary is none of that required a warrant. None of it required a judge. Because the Fourth Amendment in the US, which is supposed to protect Americans from unreasonable searches, well, that only applies to direct government surveillance. If the government wants to go through your personal records, well, they need legal authority to compel it.
But if those records were already collected by a private company and are available for purchase, well, then the government just buys them. No oversight, technically legal, just a line item in a budget.
You cannot knock on someone's door and demand their privacy, but you can pay a company that photograph every page of their privacy, and apparently, yeah, that's fine.
I want everybody to sit with this for a second because, I think people hear this and their instinct is, well, I got nothing to hide. And look, this isn't about what you've done. The concern is about what data can be made to say. When you map location patterns algorithmically across hundreds of thousands of people, you're generating conclusions about people based on where they are. Not what they did, but where they were. And once that label is in a database, you try getting it removed. It's not happening.
And I also know that some people watching are thinking, okay, but that's the United States. We have a charter in Canada. And that's actually true, but it's also only part of the picture.
Because we have our own Canadian example of this exact pattern playing out. This isn't hypothetical, it already happened. The RCMP and Clearview AI.
So, Clearview AI is a facial recognition company, and they scraped billions of photos from the internet. I'm talking social media, public websites, news articles, all of this without consent. They matched those faces to identities and built a tool that could take a photo of any face and tell you who that person is.
The RCMP used it, and Canada's Privacy Commissioner investigated and found the RCMP violated the Privacy Act. That determination came out after the fact, after the tool had already been tested and after it had presumably been used in real investigations.
And that's the pattern. It's always the same. Tech pops up, an agency starts testing it, contracts, they start to happen. And by the time someone asks a question, the answer is always, oh, we take privacy very seriously. Every time. That's the response, and nothing's done.
Now, and I do want to be fair about this, Canada does have stronger privacy protections than the United States. The Charter, the Privacy Commissioner's Office, federal and provincial privacy laws, and courts that have explicitly recognized how sensitive digital information really is. That is all real.
Yeah, but there's always a but. Here is what else is true. We use the same phones as the Americans, the same apps, the same platforms, the same data brokers. Those are not Canadian companies operating under Canadian law.
Yeah, your iPhone doesn't have a Canadian privacy filter built into it. Instagram doesn't keep your data inside Canadian jurisdiction because you live in Saskatoon instead of Seattle. Google Maps, it doesn't know it should treat your location history differently depending on which side of the border you're on.
And that's scary because data flows through servers that are mostly located in the United States, operated by U.S. companies under U.S. legal jurisdiction. And the data broker market, the companies actually packaging and selling this location data, they don't have a Canadian data category. They have profiles, and your profile is in there.
Right, and Canadian agencies can just buy it. There's nothing right now stopping them. Not just the RCMP, they have access to the same commercial tools. And there's nothing in current law that explicitly prohibits a Canadian enforcement agency from purchasing commercially available data about Canadians from a U.S. data broker. Nothing.
And there's a parallel debate right now about how police and security agencies should legally access digital information in investigations. Because on one side, agencies saying they need updated tools because crime has moved online is a legitimate point. On the other side, privacy advocates, tech companies, VPN providers, they're all raising serious concerns about what modernizing those powers actually means in practice.
And then you have the whole debate over encryption. Police want modern tools, and I get it, crime is online. If the government forces companies to build a backdoor to your phone, a special access point that only law enforcement can use, well, then you've weakened the lock for everyone, not just the police, for foreign governments, for hackers, for anyone who eventually finds that door.
And then there's the metadata, which sounds boring, but metadata is the record of your communications, who you called, when, for how long, from what location. And if you know who a journalist called 15 minutes before publishing a story or who an activist texted the night before a demonstration, you don't need the conversation. That record is enough.
Canada has a real choice in front of it right now. Canada needs effective law enforcement. Full stop. The question is whether government access to the most intimate details of your digital life, your movements, your relationships, your beliefs, where you get healthcare, whether that requires judicial authorization, meaning a warrant or a legal standard, actual oversight here, or whether agencies can quietly purchase it through a commercial market and nobody in government has to sign anything.
And right now, there are no specific rules in Canada prohibiting government agencies from buying commercial data on Canadians from foreign brokers. That gap needs to close.
Digital sovereignty in 2026 isn't about having your own currency, your own military, your own energy infrastructure. It's about whether Canadian law actually governs what happens to Canadian data. And right now, in significant ways, it just doesn't.
And the United States is showing the world what happens when you let those tools embed themselves before the rules exist. You end up with ICE building a commercial surveillance network around its own citizens.
And that's actually what is the scariest part. This doesn't arrive through legislation that says, oh, we're watching everyone. It arrives silently, quietly. A contract here, an agency testing something there, a procurement decision that doesn't even make the news. So, the question we have for you today, and I really want to know what you think about this because nobody is really talking about this. Do you believe that Canada will draw those digital sovereignty lines proactively before those tools are embedded?
Or do you think we follow the same pattern as the US, where the oversight comes after the technology is already running?
As always, leave your answers in the comments because I love to read them. And if this is the kind of deep dive that you want more of, hit like, hit subscribe, give it a hype because we're putting out new episodes every single day.
Check the pinned comment for the fun stuff, and we will see you in the next video.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.